A quiet Sunday morning in Baton Rouge never felt dangerous. The air was soft, the kind that drifts lazily through the oak trees and makes the whole neighborhood feel like it's still half asleep. Families spilled out of Redeemer Baptist Church in pastel dresses and pressed suits, clutching Bibles, hugging neighbors, laughing about weekend plans. It was the kind of morning people wish they could bottle. Simple, familiar, safe. No one expected violence here. Not in a church parking lot. Not in broad daylight. At 10:42 a.m., that illusion shattered with a single gunshot. It wasn't a bang or a pop. Witnesses later described it as a crack, a sharp, violent break in the calm, like lightning slicing the sky. The sound echoed across the lot, bounced off the brick walls of the sanctuary, and froze every smiling conversation mid-sentence. Children stopped playing. A woman screamed. Several men instinctively ducked behind cars. For a moment, the world didn't breathe. Then someone ran. It was a teenager, one of the choir kids, sprinting toward the back of the church where the sound had come from. A couple of deacons followed, and when they turned the corner, they all skidded to a stop at the sight in front of them. A young woman lay face down on the gravel, her white blouse blooming red across the back. Her phone was still in her hand, screen cracked, the last notification glowing faintly in the sunlight. She wasn't moving. Blood pooled beneath her, slow but spreading. Beside her, only a few yards away, stood a man. Not running, not hiding, just standing there as if rooted into the pavement. It was Marcus Hale, the quiet, well-liked mechanic who fixed half the cars in the neighborhood. The same Marcus who brought his father to church every Sunday, who stayed after service to help stack chairs, who everyone described, without fail, as a good kid. Now he stood motionless, breathing hard, a revolver resting on the hood of an old pickup truck like he placed it there gently, almost respectfully. His shoulders shook, but his eyes were strangely calm. Not empty, just tired, as if he'd been awake for years, and something inside him had finally stopped fighting. When the first bystander approached cautiously, Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't even look up. He just lifted both hands, slow, deliberate, and surrendered. And then he whispered something that would haunt the city for months. "Tell my father I couldn't do it to him." Police cruisers rolled in within minutes. Officers ordered him to the ground, but Marcus complied before they even finished speaking. He lay down without resistance, cheek pressed to the asphalt, hands behind his back, the kind of surrender that didn't feel forced. More like he had been waiting for this moment. Detectives arrived next, followed by paramedics who confirmed what everyone already feared. The woman was dead. Her name was Evelyn Carter, a 27-year-old teacher and beloved church volunteer known for her warm smile and the way she spoke to children like they mattered. People adored her. And now she was gone, killed in the one place she spent every week helping others find hope. The congregation gathered in small, trembling clumps. Mothers held their kids close. Elderly women cried into their handkerchiefs. Fathers shook their heads in disbelief, whispering the same stunned question over and over. How could Marcus do something like this? But Marcus wasn't crying. Even as officers lifted him into the patrol car, even as several church members broke down at the sight of him in handcuffs, he stayed eerily composed, eyes red, face tight, but no tears. Almost like the hardest part had already happened long before the gun went off. At the station, he didn't ask for a lawyer, didn't ask for his father, didn't ask for anything. "I just want to tell the truth," he said quietly. "Not because I want forgiveness, but because the truth has been buried long enough." And that was the moment detectives realized this wasn't going to be just another domestic shooting. This was something deeper, something far more tangled than jealousy or a bad breakup. Because Marcus wasn't talking like a man who snapped in a moment of rage. He was talking like a man who had been drowning for months. The officers glanced at each other, sensing they were about to hear a story no one in Baton Rouge was prepared for. A story about a family that looked whole from the outside, about a love that started beautifully, and about a betrayal festering quietly beneath Sunday smiles. The kind of truth that destroys more than one life. Before the day ended, the community would learn that the shooting behind the church was just the final crack in a long, splintering foundation, and that everything leading up to that moment was far darker than they ever imagined. Because when Marcus Hale pulled the trigger, he wasn't just killing Evelyn Carter. He was killing the last piece of himself he still recognized. They met on a rainy Friday afternoon, the kind of Louisiana rain that doesn't fall so much as it pours sideways, soaking you before you even shut the car door. Marcus Hale was hunched over the hood of an old Buick at his small garage behind the house, cursing at a stubborn bolt, when he heard tires splash onto the gravel. He didn't look up at first. People stopped by all the time with last-minute emergencies. But then he heard a voice, soft, warm, and slightly breathless from the rain. "Can you fix a brake light today? I've got church in the morning." He turned, wiping grease off his hands with the nearest rag, and for the first time saw Evelyn Carter. Her red Nissan was still dripping rain, and she stood beside it with her arms wrapped around herself, hair damp, cheeks flushed with that kind of natural beauty people don't realize they have. Not loud, not flashy, just effortlessly magnetic. Marcus had never believed in love at first sight, but something in his chest caught when she smiled. "Yeah," he said, trying to sound casual. "I got you." A 20-minute repair turned into a 2-hour conversation. Evelyn sat in the waiting room, sipping the bad, instant coffee Marcus always forgot to replace with something drinkable. She asked about the framed photo of him and a woman by the lake, his mother. She laughed at the dog-eared car magazines on the table. She listened when he talked, really listened, leaning forward slightly like every word mattered. Marcus wasn't used to that. He was the kind of man people liked, but didn't ask much about. Quiet, reliable, more wrench than voice. But with Evelyn, he found himself talking easily. About losing his mother to cancer when he was 21, about his father's spiral into alcohol, about trying to keep the garage open even when business slowed down. She didn't flinch, didn't pity him, didn't give him platitudes. She just nodded, eyes soft as if saying, "I see you." She told him she'd moved from Atlanta to get away from a life that felt too loud, too crowded, too full of people who took from her without giving anything back. She volunteered at Redeemer Baptist, worked part-time at a children's center, and wanted, more than anything, to start fresh. Fresh. Marcus liked the sound of that. Before she left, she slipped her number onto the counter. Not flirtatious, not bold, just quietly hopeful. And from that moment, things moved the way good things often do, naturally without force. Their first date wasn't a date. She stopped by to return a borrowed umbrella, and they ended up talking in the driveway until sunset. The next week, he invited her to get lunch after church. The week after, she cooked dinner for him and his father. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It wasn't fiery or dramatic. It was peaceful. And after years of watching his father drink himself in his silence, years of trying to hold a broken family together, peace felt like a miracle. Marcus found himself waking up smiling, something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. He told jokes he didn't know he remembered. He worked faster because he wanted to get home sooner. Even Pastor Leonard noticed. "She's good for you," the pastor said one night over sweet tea. "You look lighter, son, like your mother used to make you look." Marcus didn't blush easily, but he did then. Evelyn became a part of his world without ever asking for space. She folded laundry beside him, painted the kitchen cabinets with him, sat in the front row at church while he and his father sat quietly in the back. When she hummed gospel under her breath while cooking, Marcus sometimes paused just to listen. It reminded him of Sundays before his mother got sick, when his family still felt whole. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to imagine the future. A ring, a wedding, maybe a child, maybe two. And because he was Marcus, slow, gentle, thoughtful, he didn't rush her. He waited for her to say the words first. But the words didn't come right away. Instead, one night while they lay on the couch watching an old Bruce Willis movie, Marcus whispered, almost without meaning, to "I love you." He regretted it instantly. Too soon. Too heavy. But Evelyn didn't pull away. She didn't stiffen. She didn't laugh. She lifted her head, placed her hand on his chest, and whispered back, "You make me feel safe." And for Marcus, that was enough. By fall, she was at the Hale house more nights than she was at her apartment. She left her toothbrush in the bathroom, her favorite mug in the cabinet, her clothes in the laundry basket. Pastor Leonard treated her like family, asking about her job, blessing her meals, even giving her a small silver necklace that once belonged to Marcus's mother. The three of them began to form something that looked like a family again. A new version, patched together from old wounds and new hope. But there were small signs, tiny cracks in the glass, just faint enough for Marcus to ignore. A moment of silence too long. A look she didn't explain. Nights when her smile felt borrowed instead of real. He brushed them off, chalked them up to stress, to her past, to anything except the truth. Because sometimes a man who finally finds peace refuses to believe it could ever be threatened. And Marcus Hale had no idea that the woman who made him feel whole again was carrying secrets sharp enough to break him in ways he had never imagined. It started with a vibration on a nightstand, small, harmless, the kind of sound Marcus usually ignored. He was in the kitchen washing up after dinner when he heard it again, a quick buzz followed by the faint glow of Evelyn's phone lighting up the darkened bedroom. He didn't mean to look. He wasn't the type to snoop, not after everything he'd watched his parents go through when trust collapsed between them. But something about the way Evelyn had been moving lately, distant, quieter, slipping away even when sitting right beside him, made that glow feel like a warning. He wiped his hands, walked toward the bedroom, and that was when the message lit across the screen. Last night wasn't enough. I need to see you again. Marcus froze. The words punched the air right out of his lungs. There was no emoji, no playful tone, just raw, unmistakable intimacy. His first instinct was denial. Wrong number. Spam. A joke. But the number wasn't saved. No name. Just a string of digits staring back at him like a dare. He didn't touch the phone. He didn't even breathe for a moment, worried the slightest movement would break whatever reality he was in and force him into the next one, the one where everything hurt. When Evelyn came out of the shower, humming softly as she towel-dried her hair, Marcus didn't say a word. He just set the phone back where it had been and climbed into bed. She lay beside him, kissed his shoulder, and fell asleep within minutes. Marcus lay awake the entire night, staring at the ceiling fan, turning slow circles above him, trying to convince himself he'd misunderstood. He replayed the last few weeks in his mind. Her mood swings, her late nights at Bible study, the way she flinched when he surprised her from behind, the times he caught her staring off like she was somewhere else entirely. Still, he refused to believe what that message implied. Because love, real love, makes people stupidly hopeful. The next morning, Evelyn made pancakes like nothing was wrong. She smiled. She kissed him goodbye. She told him she loved him. The first time she'd said it twice in one day. And he said it back, though the words tasted different now. Heavier, cautious. From that day on, Marcus watched more closely, even if he pretended not to. Evelyn's absences stretched longer. She started spending evenings at church events Marcus had never heard Pastor Leonard mention. She claimed she was volunteering more, helping with youth programs, preparing lessons for kids. But Marcus knew children didn't have meetings at 10 p.m. on Tuesdays. He began showing up at the garage earlier and leaving later just to stay busy, just to silence the thoughts. But they followed him, crept into his sockets, burrowed behind his eyes, whispered into the silence of his toolbox drawers. One night, he returned home earlier than usual. The lights in the living room were dim. Evelyn sitting quietly on the couch, staring at her phone with her body stiff and her breathing tight. When he approached and kissed her cheek, she jolted like someone touched by a live wire. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. She nodded too quickly. Just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was scared. Of what? Marcus couldn't tell. A week later, while tossing laundry into the machine, he found her scarf, still warm, draped over the back of his father's kitchen chair. Not their chair. His father's. The scarf smelled faintly of Evelyn's perfume, leaving no doubt she'd been there recently. Did Evelyn stop by? Marcus asked Leonard that evening. Pastor Hale hesitated for just a breath, just long enough to be noticed. She came by asking about some volunteer work, Leonard replied lightly. Left her scarf, I suppose. The lie sat in the air, so thick Marcus felt it in his teeth. He carried that unease to bed that night, but he still convinced himself it was nothing. Just misinterpretations, just stress, just fear painting shadows where there were none. But shadows don't need help when the truth is dark enough on its own. Everything broke the following Sunday. After the service, Marcus stepped into the hallway near the pulpit and glanced toward the altar. There, talking quietly in the corner, were Evelyn and Pastor Leonard. From a distance, they looked innocent, two people sharing a brief conversation. But the way Evelyn laughed, touching Leonard's arm with a softness Marcus had once believed was reserved for him, made something inside him twist violently. When Leonard noticed Marcus watching, he flinched, and stepped back from her as if distance could erase what Marcus had already seen. That was the moment the first real crack formed in Marcus's chest. Suspicion is a cruel companion. Once it takes root, it doesn't go away, it grows teeth. Over the next week, Marcus started to notice everything. The late-night calls, the way Evelyn locked her phone, the way Pastor Leonard avoided eye contact at dinner, the tension in the air whenever Marcus walked into a room, as if conversations had just ended too abruptly. Little pieces, small fragments, innocent alone, damning together. But the final blow came quietly. One evening, Marcus reached for Evelyn's hand while watching TV. She pulled away, not harshly, but instinctively, like her body had forgotten his touch. The absence of warmth in her fingers felt colder than winter air. He knew then, even if he didn't want to, she was slipping away, and so was the truth. But even Marcus Hale, with all his earnest faith in people, could not imagine just how deep the betrayal went, or who, exactly, was waiting on the other end of that anonymous phone number. Because the truth wasn't just that Evelyn was seeing someone else. The truth was that she was seeing someone Marcus trusted more than anyone in the world. Someone who should have protected him. Someone who would break him in ways no stranger ever could. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of humid Louisiana afternoon where even the air feels heavy with something unspoken. Marcus was under a Corolla at the garage when his phone started buzzing nonstop. Missed calls. 3, then 4. All from a church member. His stomach tightened before he even answered. Bad news has a tone, and this call had it. Marcus, it's your dad. He collapsed during Bible study. They took him to St. Luke's. Everything after that blurred. Marcus didn't remember grabbing his keys, didn't remember driving across town, didn't remember parking crooked across 2 emergency spaces. All he remembered was bursting into the hospital hallway and seeing Pastor Leonard lying on a gurney, pale, oxygen mask strapped to his face. Nurses swarmed around him. Is he okay? Marcus asked, breathless. The nurse hesitated. Just a flicker, but enough. He's stable for now. For now. 2 words heavy enough to crush a man's knees. Marcus paced the waiting room for nearly an hour before the doctor called him in. An older man with tired eyes, holding a clipboard like a shield. He didn't sit. He didn't soften the news. I'm afraid your father has tested positive for HIV. The world didn't shatter instantly. It bent, warped, like sound underwater. Marcus blinked. HIV? That's not possible. The doctor continued, clinical and detached. His viral load is high. He's likely been living with the infection for some time. Some time, Marcus repeated, voice hollow. He felt his pulse pounding in his fingertips. There were only a few ways Pastor Leonard could have contracted HIV. And given the message Marcus saw on Evelyn's phone, given the scarf he found in his father's kitchen, given the way the two spoke quietly in corners, his mind tried to reject the implication, but horror is persistent. Your father also asked that you be tested, the doctor added. Marcus's throat closed. Me? It's routine, the doctor said gently. Given potential exposure. Exposure. A word that suddenly felt poisonous. Marcus agreed to the test, hands trembling as the nurse drew blood. He tried to pray, something he hadn't done earnestly since his mother died, but the words jammed in his throat. Hours later, the nurse returned with a sealed envelope. Would you like someone in the room with you? She asked softly. Marcus shook his head. He needed to face whatever was inside alone. He tore the envelope. Read the result. HIV positive. He didn't feel his legs give out, but the chair was suddenly under him. His breath came ragged, shallow, like someone squeezing his lungs from the inside. He covered his mouth with both hands, teeth clenched so tight his jaw throbbed. HIV. In his blood. In his body. Inside him. He thought of Evelyn. He thought of his father. His stomach lurched violently. When he finally stood, he wasn't the same man who'd walked into that hospital. He went straight to the house where Evelyn was staying that week. She opened the door with a worried smile until she saw his face. "Marcus, what? You gave it to me." His voice cracked, but not from tears. From betrayal that burned. Her expression faltered, collapsed in on itself. "Marcus, listen. I never meant." "You gave it to him too," he said quietly. "Didn't you?" She backed away as though the truth itself had weight. "I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I thought I could handle it. I didn't think." "You didn't think about me," he whispered. Evelyn burst into tears, shaking, apologizing between choking breaths. She tried to touch him, but he stepped back like her fingertips were fire. "I trusted you," he said. "I trusted both of you." Those words crumbled her more than the accusation. Marcus left without another syllable. He didn't slam the door. He didn't yell. The quiet was worse. When he returned home that night, he found his father sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. Leonard looked up with eyes swollen from crying, eyes filled with shame so deep Marcus almost felt it physically. "Son," Leonard whispered, voice shaking, "I am so sorry." Marcus didn't speak. "I failed you in ways a father never should." Leonard's voice broke. "I was weak. I should have." "Did you love her?" Marcus asked, monotone. "I was lonely," Leonard answered. "And she was there." A confession that landed like a knife. Marcus pressed both palms to the table, bracing himself. "You both broke me," he said. Together. Leonard began to cry, silently, head bowed like a man, praying for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. Later that night, Marcus opened a blank notebook and wrote a single sentence. "If I have to live with this pain for the rest of my life, someone else will too." Not anger, not rage, something colder. He placed the notebook on the dresser and stared at it like it belonged to someone else. In that moment, something inside him, something soft, hopeful, human, fractured completely. The truth was finally exposed. And Marcus Hale would never be the same again. Marcus had always been the quiet one, the steady one, the man who fixed things with his hands because he never believed he could fix anything with his words. But after the diagnosis, after the double betrayal, something inside him began to split. Not all at once. Slowly, silently, like a hairline crack traveling through glass until the entire pain gives way. The first week after learning he was HIV positive felt like moving underwater. Sounds were muffled. Light felt too bright. People's voices seemed far away, even when they stood right in front of him. He stopped going to the garage, stopped answering calls, stopped eating unless someone put food in front of him. He spent hours sitting at the edge of his bed, elbows on knees, staring at the floor, as if the truth might somehow change if he stared hard enough. But truth doesn't change. Only people do. One night, he opened the small notebook he'd begun keeping after his mother died. He tore out the old pages, every memory, every prayer, every hope, and replaced them with words that didn't sound like him at all. "I am contaminated. They destroyed my future. If pain can be passed on, then justice can too." He wrote until his fingers cramped. He read the words again and again, as though memorizing a spell that might hold his world together. But the spell didn't soothe him. It hardened him. The second week, he tried going back to the garage. But the sound of engines felt too loud, too sharp. The smell of metal and oil made him nauseous. One customer asked if he was okay. Just a simple, kind question, and Marcus nearly snapped the wrench in his hands. He turned the open sign to closed at midday and didn't return the rest of the week. This wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something deeper, darker, a numbness that wrapped itself around his ribs like barbed wire. Nights were the worst. He'd lie awake, replaying the moment the doctor handed him the envelope. The way Evelyn cried. The way his father couldn't look him in the eye. Over and over, like needles pressing into the same wound. He stopped sleeping. Stopped shaving. Let dishes pile up on the counter. And the fewer words he spoke aloud, the louder the thoughts in his head became. By week 3, The numbness began to evolve into something sharp. It started when he found one of Evelyn's voicemail messages still saved on his phone. Her voice soft and sweet, recorded weeks before everything unraveled. "Hey baby, just call and hear your voice. I miss you." He listened once, twice, 5 times, and then he threw the phone across the room so hard it cracked against the wall. That same afternoon, he drove out to the gun range on the edge of town, the same place he and his father used to go when he was younger. He hadn't fired a gun in years. The recoil felt different now. Not thrilling, not frightening, just grounding, like a physical confirmation of something building inside him. The range master, a denim-vested retiree who'd known Marcus since high school, clapped him on the shoulder. "Stress relief, huh?" Marcus forced a smile. Something like that. But he wasn't practicing for stress relief. He was practicing for clarity. Each bullet that punched into the silhouette target made the noise in his head quiet just a little. He found himself imagining the unanswered questions leaving his body with every pull of the trigger. Imagining a world where he didn't have to wake up each morning with a virus that wasn't his fault. Imagining a world where he wasn't the one suffering for other people's sins. Still, Marcus didn't think about killing anyone. Not yet. Not consciously. But the seed was planted. The spark struck. And when Evelyn sent that final text, short, almost dismissive, it was the last blow his cracking world could withstand. "Marcus, we both made mistakes. You need to deal with your emotions, not blame me. Your emotions, not blame me." He read the message 10 times, felt the words slice into the part of him that still hoped she felt remorse. She didn't. She had moved on from him, from accountability, from the consequences. That night, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a single bullet placed in the center. He stared at it for a long time, the metal catching the soft kitchen light. He didn't cry. Couldn't cry. His body felt beyond tears. He folded a sheet of paper beside the bullet. "If I carry this pain forever, she will carry something too." The next morning, he cleaned the revolver, wiped the grip, checked the chamber. Then he sent Evelyn one short message. "Meet me behind Redeemer Baptist tomorrow. Noon. I need to talk. One last time." She responded with a simple, "Okay." Sunday arrived like any other. People filled the pews. Voices rose in him. Marcus sat at the back with his father, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't hear a single word of the sermon. He only heard the ticking inside his chest. After service, while families laughed and hugged outside, Marcus walked to the back lot. The sun was bright, almost too bright. It made the moment feel unreal, like a memory he was watching instead of living. Evelyn arrived a few minutes later, walking slowly, cautiously. Her expression softened when she saw him. "Marcus, I'm glad you wanted to talk." He opened his mouth, but no words came. Everything he'd rehearsed evaporated. All that remained was the weight of everything he'd lost. His health, his trust, his father, his future. He lifted the gun. For a second, just 1 second, Evelyn's eyes flickered with something that might have been understanding. "Wait, Marcus." The shot cracked through the quiet morning. She fell before the echo faded. Marcus stared at her body, the silence thickening around him. He placed the gun gently on the hood of a nearby truck, picked up his phone, and dialed 911 with steady hands. "My name is Marcus Hale," he said calmly. "I just shot someone. I'll be waiting here." He did not run. He did not hide. Because in his fractured mind, the moment the trigger clicked, everything that had been tormenting him finally went still. And a man who has lost everything has nothing left to fear. The courtroom felt less like a place of justice and more like a pressure cooker ready to explode. By the time Marcus Hale was brought in for trial, the entire state seemed to have chosen sides. Some saw him as a murderer in plain clothes. Others whispered that he was a broken man pushed past the brink by a betrayal too twisted for most hearts to comprehend. Cameras lined the hallway every morning. Reporters jostled for angles. And inside, the gallery filled before the bailiffs even unlocked the doors. Marcus entered in a gray suit that hung a little loose on his frame, as if he'd shrunk inside it. A deputy guided him to the defense table, and he sat stiffly, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the grain of the wood. For a moment, he looked like a man waiting for a verdict he'd already accepted long before anyone else arrived. The judge struck the gavel once, sharp and steady. State of Louisiana versus Marcus Hale. We begin. The prosecution wasted no time shaping the narrative. Assistant District Attorney Lillian Shaw, a woman known for her surgical precision and relentless calm, stepped before the jury and spoke with a voice that carried every ounce of authority the state could muster. This was not a crime of passion, she began. This was not a moment of confusion. This was a planned execution committed in broad daylight behind a house of God. She pointed toward the evidence table, the revolver sealed in a clear plastic bag, the single bullet hole in the victim's blouse captured in a large photo board. He told her to come. He chose the place. He brought the weapon. He made the decision. And then he pulled the trigger. Her words fell like stones into the jury box. No amount of heartbreak, she continued, and no amount of betrayal justifies homicide. We are a nation of laws, not emotions. On the defense side, Attorney Raymond Cole rose slowly, buttoned his jacket, and approached the jury with a different energy entirely. He didn't begin with evidence. He began with a breath. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not clean. It is not simple. And if you walk away believing it is, then we have failed here today. He walked closer, voice lower now, almost intimate. My client is not denying what he did. He's not hiding from it. You'll hear him say it with his own mouth. But this trial isn't about whether he pulled the trigger. It's about why. He let the silence stretch. Marcus Hale is not a monster. He is a man shattered, physically, emotionally, spiritually, by the two people he trusted most. The love of his life, his father, and a diagnosis that changed everything. A few jurors shifted, uncomfortable but listening. This was not revenge, Cole said quietly. This was collapse. Witnesses took the stand one by one. Medical professionals confirmed the HIV diagnoses. Neighbors described Marcus fading in the weeks before the shooting. His weight loss, his vacant eyes, the shouting from the garage late at night that sounded less like anger and more like a man drowning. A childhood friend recounted visiting him 2 days before the shooting, finding him sitting alone in the dark with a cold cup of coffee and a notebook full of scribbled words that didn't sound like Marcus at all. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Marcus took the stand. He walked slowly, almost timidly, like someone stepping into water he knew was too deep. After swearing in, he sat, cleared his throat once, and looked at the jury through eyes that seemed older than his 32 years. My name is Marcus Hale, he began, and I shot Evelyn Carter. Gasps in the gallery. Someone in the back whispered, Jesus. Marcus held up a trembling hand, not to silence them, but to steady himself. I'm not here to tell you I didn't do it. I'm not here to make excuses. I just want to tell you what happened inside me. He spoke of the love he once had for Evelyn, of the nights they spent talking about dreams and children. He spoke of his bond with his father, the man he trusted more than anyone. And then he spoke of the day everything fell apart. When a doctor told me I was positive, I thought my life ended right there. But then I learned she had slept with my father. And suddenly I felt like I didn't even know whose life I was living anymore. A tear slid down his cheek, but his voice stayed steady. I didn't wake up planning to kill her. I swear to God I didn't. But when she laughed that day, he paused, breath shaking. It felt like none of it mattered to her. Not my life. Not my future. Not the truth. The courtroom was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. I snapped, he whispered, and I have to live with that. Every day. I see her face every time I close my eyes. And I know that what I did was wrong. I know it. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to understand the man I was is not the man I am standing here today. When he stepped down, even some of the deputies avoided eye contact, not out of judgment, but because the rawness of his confession felt almost too human to look at directly. Closing arguments came hard and fast. The prosecution, sympathy is not justice. He made a choice. Choices have consequences. The defense, justice isn't always punishment. Sometimes justice is understanding the full weight of brokenness. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. 9 long, quiet, breathless hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice wavered as he read the verdict. Guilty of manslaughter, not murder. A ripple of emotion swept through the room. Relief, anger, confusion, quiet sobbing. Marcus's shoulders dropped as if someone removed a boulder from his spine. Tears streamed down his face. Not victory, not joy, just release. At the sentencing, the judge looked at him for a long moment before speaking. You are not a hardened criminal, Mr. Hale, but you are a man who made an irreversible choice. 10 years in state prison. Parole eligibility after 7. The gavel struck. Evelyn's sister wept into her hands. Marcus bowed his head, hands trembling as deputies cuffed him. And in that moment, 2 families shattered, 2 futures rewritten. The courtroom finally understood something the law could never fully capture. Justice is clear on paper, but in the human heart, it is never simple. Angola wasn't a prison you simply served time in. It was a place that swallowed men whole, chewed them down to the bone, and spat out whatever was left. When Marcus Hale stepped off the transport bus and felt the Louisiana heat press against his neck like a warning, he understood instantly. This was not punishment. This was exile. The guards marched the new inmates down a long, sunburnt corridor of razor wire and cracked earth. In the distance, work crews hacked at fields under armed watchtowers. More plantation than penitentiary. Angola had earned its reputation honestly. Violence simmered under every breath, and silence wasn't peaceful here. It was predatory. Marcus kept his eyes low, his hands steady, and his heartbeat contained. He wasn't a fighter, wasn't a brawler, wasn't the type who survived in prisons like this by brute force. All he had was the weight of his guilt and the ghost of Evelyn's final look. For the first few weeks, that was enough to keep him numb. He slept on a thin mattress with springs that jabbed his ribs. Ate food that tasted like cardboard and regret. Worked in a laundry room, folding uniforms while older inmates sized him up. They whispered his name, the guy who shot his girlfriend behind a church. Some saw weakness. Others saw tragedy. Most saw nothing at all. Angola did that to people. The nights were worst. The darkness in his cell felt thicker than normal darkness, like it carried a pulse. He'd lie awake listening to muffled cries, guards barking orders, fists slamming against metal. And when those sounds faded, his mind replayed the gunshot again and again until he couldn't tell if the echo was memory or hallucination. But it wasn't fear that kept him awake. It was shame. One night, after a particularly brutal fight broke out 2 cells down, Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk and whispered into the dark, "Mama, I don't know who I am anymore." He didn't expect an answer. None came. But the next morning, the prison chaplain did. A soft-spoken man with tired eyes, Chaplain Brooks approached him quietly in the yard. "You look like someone carrying more than one sentence," he said. Marcus didn't respond. Brooks didn't push. "When you're ready for air, son, the chapel's open." Marcus didn't go that day. Didn't go the next. But by week 6, the suffocation inside his chest became too heavy, and he found himself sitting on a wooden pew, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the floor. The chaplain didn't ask him to confess, didn't quote scripture, didn't offer cliches about forgiveness or redemption. He simply sat beside him in silence. Sometimes silence is the only language a shattered man can still understand. Slowly, painfully, Marcus began opening up. Not in grand speeches, not in emotional breakdowns. In fragments. "I ruined everything. He trusted me. She trusted me once too." The chaplain listened. And listening, strangely, felt like the first time in months Marcus wasn't drowning. Around month 4, he joined a support group for HIV-positive inmates. He didn't speak at first, just observed. Men scarred by bullets, by disease, by life shared their stories, cried openly, cursed themselves, cursed God, laughed at absurd moments of survival. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a strange, unfamiliar thread pulling him back toward humanity. One night, a young inmate named Darius, a quiet kid, barely 20, failed to show up at group. The next evening, Marcus heard panicked yelling echoed down the tier. He followed the sound instinctively, saw guards fumbling with keys, inmates shouting. Through the bars, he saw Darius hanging from a torn bedsheet. Marcus reacted without thinking. He shoved past two inmates, grabbed the kid's body, held him up with both arms, screaming for the guards to cut him down. By the time they hauled Darius to the infirmary, Marcus's arms were shaking so violently the nurse had to steady him. Later, in the chapel, Chaplain Brooks found him sitting alone. "You saved that boy's life," the chaplain said. Marcus didn't blink. "I couldn't save hers." The chaplain nodded slowly. "Maybe saving someone else is how you start saving the part of yourself she couldn't." From then on, Marcus changed. He worked in the prison library, organizing books worn thin from years of desperate hands. On small scraps of paper, he started leaving handwritten notes inside them. "This page survives. So can you. God hears even when you don't speak. You matter." He helped new inmates learn to read, walked Darius to every support meeting, volunteered for any job that kept him from rotting in his own head. He still thought about Evelyn every day, but the memory grew less jagged, less like a knife, more like a scar. Sometimes, in the rare, quiet moments, he'd take out the letter he wrote to his mother and tuck into his Bible. "I'm trying. I promise you, I'm trying." He didn't believe in redemption, not for himself, but he believed in effort, in choosing decency even when you felt unworthy of it. Angola hadn't broken him. It had stripped him down until there was nothing left but the raw pieces of a man forced to rebuild from scratch. And slowly, brick by painful brick, something new emerged. Not absolution, not forgiveness, but purpose. A small, flickering light in a place built to extinguish all of them. Marcus Hale walked into Angola a murderer. He was becoming something else, a man learning to breathe again. When Marcus Hale finally stepped out of Angola after 7 long years, freedom didn't rush toward him. It approached slowly, carefully, like a stray animal unsure if it could trust him. The gate clanged shut behind him, but the sound didn't feel like release. It felt like the closing of a chapter he hadn't yet decided he deserved to finish. A bus carried him north, past fields he once worked in chains, past towns he barely recognized. He didn't go back to Baton Rouge. The ghosts there were too loud. Instead, he settled in Shreveport, in a tiny apartment above a laundromat, peeling paint, humming pipes, a single window facing the alley. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. Quiet, he learned, was a kind of luxury. He found work at a local auto shop. 6 days a week, he kept his head down, fixed engines, changed oil, and rebuilt transmissions like a man rebuilding himself piece by fragile piece. He never raised his voice, never complained, never explained who he was or what he had done unless someone recognized the name and asked directly. Most didn't. To them, he was just Marcus, the quiet mechanic with tired eyes, gentle hands, and a tendency to stare at the sky like he was listening for something no one else could hear. He went to church occasionally, always in the back row, always slipping out before the final hymn. The pastor shook hands at the door, never pushing, never asking. Marcus appreciated that. Some stories weren't meant to be told every Sunday. He kept his medication in a small wooden box by his bed, took each pill with the same steady discipline he used in prison. His viral load stayed low. Doctors told him he was doing well. But inside, the old wounds never fully closed. Some nights he woke drenched in sweat, heart pounding, hands clenched around the ghost of a gun he no longer owned. Other times, he saw Evelyn's face, not in accusation, but in the softness she once carried, the softness he'd helped shatter forever. He wrote letters he never mailed, letters to Evelyn's sister, to the chaplain, to himself, letters that lived folded tight inside his Bible like pressed flowers from season long gone. Then one day it happened. A sunflower, bright, simple, left on the hood of his car in the shop parking lot. No note, no signature, just a single sunflower leaning against the windshield like a whisper of forgiveness. Marcus didn't pick it up right away. He stood there for nearly a full minute, staring at it, frozen in the Louisiana heat. A coworker walked past, glanced at the flower, raised an eyebrow, then went inside without a word. They knew better than to ask. Finally, Marcus reached out. His fingers brushed the petals. He exhaled, a long, trembling breath that felt like it had been trapped inside him for years. That night, he placed a sunflower in an empty glass on the windowsill. It wilted slowly over the next week, bending gently toward the light like it still wanted to grow. When it finally withered, he wrapped the stem in a strip of notebook paper and tucked it into his Bible beside the letter he'd written to Evelyn's sister months earlier. He didn't need to know who sent it. The mystery itself was enough, a reminder that the world could still offer small mercies. Life settled into a rhythm, a humble, quiet rhythm. Marcus helped older customers carry groceries to their cars. He left a folded dollar under the vending machine for whoever came up short. He walked past the park every evening and nodded at the same old men playing dominoes, though he never joined. He lived small, lived gently, lived carefully, as if afraid to bruise the world again. Years passed, not loudly, not dramatically, just passed. He aged faster than most men his age, lines deepening around his mouth, hair thinning, shoulders bowing slightly as though still carrying invisible chains. But he never complained. Then, one rainy Thursday morning, Marcus didn't show up for work. The shop manager thought he must have overslept. Marcus had never missed a shift in 8 years. By noon, concern turned to worry. A coworker walked across the street to the laundromat, climbed the narrow stairs, and knocked on his door. No answer. The door wasn't locked. They found Marcus peacefully lying on his bed, one hand resting on his chest, the other loosely holding his Bible. The sunflower stem was still tucked between its pages. Doctors said heart failure. Quiet, quick, gentle, the way a tired soul sometimes chooses to leave. Word spread quietly. Not many came to the gravesite, just the chaplain from Angola, his defense attorney, 2 co-workers, and one unexpected figure. His father. Elias Hale was older now, fragile, gray, a shadow of the man he once was. He didn't speak during the service, didn't greet anyone. When the others began to walk away, Elias stepped forward, placed a folded letter on the casket, and whispered, "I never stopped praying for you, son." Then he left, disappearing down the gravel path like a man who had carried sorrow too long. Marcus Hale died without a monument, without headlines, without a public story. But somewhere in Angola, a librarian kept his old letters filed in a drawer labeled Hope from the Inside. And somewhere in Shreveport, a young mechanic still told new hires about the quiet man who left kindness like breadcrumbs, small, ordinary acts that meant everything. And somewhere, a stranger, perhaps Evelyn's sister, perhaps someone else, looked at a field of sunflowers and remembered the man who once believed he didn't deserve forgiveness. Life rarely gives back what it takes. But sometimes, just sometimes, it offers a gentler ending. Marcus didn't die redeemed, didn't die healed, didn't die whole. He died trying. And sometimes in this broken world, that's enough.